Hello everyone, welcome back to Buried Files. Tonight we present 7 deeply disturbing true new house horror stories that will shatter your sense of safety in what should be the most secure place, your own home. These are not works of fiction, but documented accounts from real people who discovered that the homes they purchased held dark secrets buried within their walls, basements, and histories. Each story has been cross-referenced with police reports, property records, and direct witness accounts to ensure complete authenticity. From hidden rooms containing evidence of unthinkable crimes to neighbors who watch with sinister intent, these true events reveal that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not supernatural but horrifyingly human. If you appreciate thoroughly researched horror content that exposes the darkness lurking behind suburban facades, subscribe to Buried Files and activate the notification bell so you never miss our investigations into real-world terror. After these accounts, share your own unsettling home discoveries in the comments below. Now prepare yourself as we unlock the buried files of 7 homes that became prisons of fear. Tyler and Marcus moved into their foreclosed Victorian home in Wanakina with genuine excitement, 2 friends who had finally achieved their dream of home ownership together. The 3-story house with its ornate trim and wraparound porch represented everything they had worked toward for years. The realtor, a cheerful woman named Patricia, had assured them the foreclosure was nothing sinister, just a lengthy estate dispute that kept the property tied up in legal proceedings for 3 years. The price seemed almost too good to be true, but Patricia explained that banks were motivated to unload properties that sat vacant for extended periods. Tyler and Marcus signed the papers without hesitation, eager to begin their renovation journey. The first week passed in a blur of unpacking boxes, painting walls, and planning their renovation timeline. The house needed work but had excellent bones with original hardwood floors and detailed crown molding throughout. Their friends helped them move furniture, and neighbors stopped by to welcome them to the street. Everything felt perfect, exactly as they had imagined home ownership would be. The basement remained largely unexplored during those initial days, a dark concrete space they planned to convert into a recreation room once the main floors were finished. On their 8th night in the house, Tyler descended to the basement with a tape measure and notepad, ready to calculate dimensions for the flooring project they planned to start the following month. Marcus joined him, carrying a work lamp to illuminate the dim space. The basement stretched the full footprint of the house, approximately 1,200 square feet of raw concrete and exposed beams. As they measured and made notes, Tyler noticed something peculiar about the floor in the far corner beneath the stairs. The concrete there appeared different, slightly lighter in color and textured differently than the rest of the basement floor. Marcus knelt down and ran his hand across the surface, confirming what Tyler observed. The concrete in that section had been poured separately, clearly at a different time than the original basement floor. The patch measured roughly 4 feet by 6 feet, an oddly specific size that immediately struck both of them as suspicious. They exchanged concerned glances, both thinking the same thing without voicing it aloud. Marcus suggested they needed to investigate before investing money in flooring, concerned that foundation issues or poor drainage could be hidden beneath the newer concrete, problems that could cost thousands to repair. Tyler retrieved a sledgehammer from their tool collection upstairs while Marcus cleared the area of stored boxes. The concrete patch looked relatively thin compared to the rest of the basement floor, perhaps only a few inches deep. Tyler raised the sledgehammer and brought it down hard against the lighter concrete. The first strike created a small crater. The second strike broke through completely, revealing a dark, hollow space beneath. The smell hit them immediately, a thick, nauseating odor that sent both men stumbling backward, covering their mouths and noses. Marcus grabbed the work lamp and directed its beam into the hole Tyler had created. The light revealed rotting fabric, dark and mildewed, surrounding what appeared to be bundled shapes wrapped in deteriorating plastic sheeting. Tyler enlarged the hole with several more strikes, each impact releasing more of the terrible smell into the basement air. Within minutes, they had exposed enough of the cavity to see clearly what lay beneath their basement floor. Bones, unmistakably human, partially wrapped in shredded plastic and decayed cloth, resting in a shallow grave that had been sealed beneath fresh concrete. Tyler called the police while Marcus stood frozen, staring at their discovery with mounting horror. Within 20 minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived, followed shortly by detectives and a forensics team. The police cordoned off the entire property with yellow tape, transforming their dream home into a crime scene. Tyler and Marcus spent the next 6 hours being questioned separately, explaining repeatedly how they discovered the remains, detailing their purchase of the property, and providing documentation of their ownership. Detectives treated them with professional courtesy but obvious suspicion, standard procedure when human remains are discovered. The investigation expanded rapidly over the following days. Forensics teams excavated the entire basement floor, searching for additional remains or evidence. Tyler and Marcus stayed in a hotel while police processed their home, unable to enter their own property. Detectives contacted them on the 4th day with preliminary findings. The remains belonged to a man named Robert Chen, a 43-year-old business partner of the previous owner, a man named Harold Vance. Chen had been reported missing in August 2016 by his wife after he failed to return home from what he told her was a business meeting with Vance. Police had investigated his disappearance at the time but found no evidence of foul play. Chen's car was discovered abandoned near the Canadian border 3 days after he vanished, leading investigators to theorize he had fled the country, possibly to escape financial troubles related to their failing business partnership. Harold Vance had owned the house for 18 years, before dying of an apparent heart attack in November 2018, 2 years after Chen disappeared. Vance lived alone with no immediate family, and his estate became entangled in legal disputes with distant relatives, which explained why the house sat vacant for so long before being foreclosed and sold. The detective assigned to their case, a veteran investigator named Morrison, explained that Vance had likely killed Chen during a dispute, buried him in the basement, and poured fresh concrete to conceal the crime. Vance had lived above his victim's grave for 2 years before his own death, taking his secret with him. But the investigation revealed details far more disturbing than a simple murder concealed beneath concrete. Forensic analysis of Chen's remains showed evidence of severe trauma to his extremities consistent with restraint injuries. The plastic sheeting that wrapped his body contained tears and punctures made from the inside, suggesting movement after burial. The medical examiner determined that Chen had likely been alive, though possibly unconscious, when Vance sealed him beneath the concrete. Scratch marks were discovered on the underside of the floor joists directly above where the body lay. Marks that could only have been made by someone beneath the basement floor, trapped in the shallow cavity, clawing desperately at the wood above. This revelation transformed the case from murder to something far more sinister. Additional investigation of the house revealed hidden cameras that Vance had installed throughout the property, disguised within air vents and light fixtures. Police recovered recording equipment from a locked closet in the master bedroom, including dozens of hard drives containing thousands of hours of footage. The recording showed Vance sitting in his living room at night, headphones on, listening intently to audio feeds from the basement. In several recordings, Vance could be heard speaking to the basement floor, asking questions and pausing as if receiving responses, though no other voices were audible on the recordings. Tyler and Marcus were finally allowed back into their home after 3 weeks, but the property no longer felt like a dream. The basement had been completely excavated, leaving exposed earth and broken concrete. police had removed sections of wall and flooring throughout the house to access and remove the surveillance equipment. The extensive damage would require tens of thousands in repairs that their insurance refused to cover, citing the damage as related to criminal investigation rather than casualty loss. Worse than the physical damage was the psychological weight of knowing what happened beneath their feet. Marcus began experiencing severe insomnia, unable to sleep in a house where someone had been buried alive. Tyler tried to maintain normalcy but found himself obsessing over the recordings police had described, imagining what Chen must have experienced in his final hours, trapped in darkness, slowly suffocating as concrete sealed him away from the world. They attempted to continue living in the house, unwilling to accept financial ruin after investing their savings in the down payment. But the house itself seemed to reject their presence. Strange occurrences began immediately after they moved back in. Tyler would wake at night to sounds of scratching, always seeming to come from within the walls or beneath the floors, though he could never pinpoint the exact source. Marcus reported hearing breathing sounds in the basement when he worked down there, breath that did not match his own rhythm. They both experienced the unsettling sensation of being watched constantly, even when alone. Security cameras they installed captured inexplicable phenomena: shadows moving across the basement at precise times, temperature drops in specific locations, and most disturbing, what appeared to be a figure standing motionless in the corner of the basement footage, visible only in infrared mode, appearing every night at exactly 3:47 in the morning. 3:47 was the estimated time of Robert Chen's death, calculated by forensic pathologists based on concrete curing time and survivability in the conditions he faced. The correlation seemed impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Marcus became convinced that something remained in the house, some echo or residue of the horror that transpired there. Tyler tried to rationalize their experiences as stress-induced hallucinations, products of trauma and exhaustion, but even he could not explain the security footage or the consistent timing of the phenomena they experienced. After 4 months of sleepless nights and mounting psychological distress, they made the decision to abandon the property. They stopped making mortgage payments, knowing foreclosure was inevitable but seeing no other option. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings within 90 days. Tyler and Marcus declared bankruptcy 6 months after purchasing their dream home, their credit destroyed and savings depleted. They moved to separate apartments in different cities, their friendship strained beyond repair by the shared trauma. Tyler relocated to Vermont, as far from Wanakina as he could afford to move, desperate to put distance between himself and the house that ruined his life. But distance provided no relief. Tyler continued experiencing the phenomena even hundreds of miles away. He received phone calls on his cell phone from their old landline number, a number that had been disconnected when they stopped paying bills. The calls came always at 3:47 in the morning. When Tyler answered, he heard only breathing, rhythmic and labored, and beneath it the sound of fingernails scratching against concrete. He blocked the number, but the calls continued from different numbers, always displaying the same disconnected landline in the caller ID, despite originating from various area codes. The house in Wanakina remains unsold even now, 2 years after Tyler and Marcus fled. The bank listed it at a drastically reduced price, but inspections reveal nothing wrong with the structure. Still, no offers have been made. Real estate agents report feeling uncomfortable during showings, and potential buyers consistently decline to make offers after viewing the property. Local residents avoid the house entirely, and children no longer play on the street where it sits. The basement, resealed with new concrete by the bank, sometimes shows fresh scratch marks in the morning, thin lines scored into the smooth surface overnight, appearing in the exact location where Robert Chen was buried. Tyler still receives calls from the disconnected number. Marcus has not been heard from in over a year, his current location unknown even to his family. And in Wanakina, the Victorian house with its ornate trim and wraparound porch sits empty, waiting patiently for new owners who do not yet know what lies beneath their future basement floor. Rachel moved into her apartment in Cranberry Lake alone after her divorce, eager for a fresh start away from the painful memories of her failed marriage. The one-bedroom unit on the third floor of an older building seemed perfect for her needs, affordable rent in a quiet neighborhood with views of the surrounding forest from her bedroom window. The landlord, a middle-aged man named Dennis, offered her the first month free as a move-in special, unusually generous for the area where rental properties were in high demand. Rachel accepted gratefully, seeing it as a sign that her luck was finally changing after the difficult year she had endured. Her neighbor Jessie helped her carry boxes up the narrow stairwell on moving day, a friendly gesture that made Rachel feel welcomed in her new building. As they unpacked kitchen items, Jessie mentioned casually that the previous tenant had left suddenly about 6 months ago, abandoning the apartment with all belongings still inside. Rachel found this odd and asked what had happened to prompt such an abrupt departure. Jessie shrugged and said nobody really knew, just that one day the tenant was there and the next day she was gone, leaving everything behind. The landlord had cleared out the abandoned belongings and renovated the unit before listing it for rent again. Rachel dismissed the story as just another tale of someone fleeing debt or relationship troubles, nothing particularly unusual in the transient world of rental housing. She focused on making the apartment her own, hanging curtains, arranging furniture, and trying to build a new life from the pieces of her old one. The apartment felt comfortable enough during those first days, and Rachel slept well for the first time in months, relieved to be away from the tension of her former home. Strange occurrences began within the first week, small things that Rachel initially dismissed as forgetfulness or stress. Her keys would be hanging on different hooks than where she remembered leaving them. The coffee maker turned itself on each morning at exactly 6:15, brewing a full pot even though Rachel never programmed it and typically did not wake until 7. She assumed she must have accidentally set it during her unpacking and forgot about it, though she could not remember doing so. More disturbing was the clothing that appeared in her laundry hamper, items that definitely did not belong to her. A gray cardigan size small appeared folded on top of her dirty clothes 3 days after she moved in. Rachel wore size medium and owned nothing gray. She assumed Jessie must have accidentally mixed laundry and left it in her apartment, though she could not recall Jessie bringing laundry to her unit. She set the cardigan aside to return to Jessie but kept forgetting. 2 days later, a pair of jeans appeared in her hamper, also too small to be hers, a style she never wore. Rachel began to feel genuinely unsettled but tried to rationalize the occurrences as her own confusion during the stressful moving period. The discovery that shattered all rational explanations came during her second week in the apartment. Rachel was reorganizing her bedroom closet, moving seasonal clothes to the back to make room for current wardrobe items. As she pushed hanging clothes aside, she noticed something she had somehow missed during her initial unpacking. A door built into the back wall of the closet, painted the same color as the surrounding wall and partially obscured by the closet's hanging rod. The door was narrow, perhaps 2 feet wide, with a simple brass knob but no visible lock or keyhole. Rachel tried the knob and found it locked from the other side. She called Dennis immediately, describing what she had found and asking if he knew anything about the door. Dennis claimed complete ignorance, insisting he had never seen a second door inside that closet and suggesting Rachel must be mistaken. His dismissive tone irritated her, and after hanging up, she decided to investigate herself rather than wait for his help. Using a crowbar from her small tool collection, Rachel wedged the tool between door and frame and pried with all her strength. The door resisted at first, then suddenly gave way with a crack of splintering wood. The space beyond made Rachel's blood turn cold. A tiny room, barely 4 feet wide and perhaps 6 feet deep, completely hidden behind her bedroom closet. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in acoustic foam panels, the kind used in recording studios to soundproof spaces. The room contained a sleeping bag spread on the floor, a plastic bucket in one corner, and several empty food wrappers scattered near the sleeping bag. But most disturbing were the walls beneath the foam panels. Where panels had fallen away or been torn, the underlying wall surface was covered entirely in scratch marks. Hundreds of thin lines scored into the drywall, many deep enough to reveal the wooden studs beneath. Rachel stumbled backward out of the closet and immediately called the police. 2 officers arrived within 30 minutes and documented the hidden room with photographs and notes. They seemed concerned but explained that without evidence of a crime, they could only file a report. The room was disturbing, they acknowledged, but not illegal. Old buildings often had strange architectural quirks, sealed-off spaces from previous renovations. Rachel insisted someone had been living in that hidden room recently, pointing to the food wrappers and sleeping bag. But the officers noted that items could have been there for months or even years, given the sealed nature of the space. After the police left, Rachel could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened in her apartment. She began researching the previous tenant online, searching local news and social media for any information. What she discovered made the hidden room even more sinister. The previous tenant was a woman named Catherine Marsh, age 28, who had been reported missing by her sister in March, 6 months earlier. Catherine's sister had filed a missing person report after Catherine stopped responding to calls and texts. Police had investigated but found no evidence of foul play. Catherine's car was discovered in the apartment building parking lot, her purse and phone inside her apartment, but Catherine herself had vanished without explanation. The police report, which Rachel accessed through a public records request, noted that investigators found no signs of struggle in Catherine's apartment, no blood or evidence of violence, and no indication Catherine planned to leave. Her bank accounts showed no activity after the date she disappeared. Her phone last pinged from a cell tower serving the apartment building on the night she vanished, the signal going dead at approximately 2:30 in the morning. The case remained open but inactive, classified as a voluntary missing person despite the suspicious circumstances. Rachel became convinced that Catherine's disappearance was connected to the hidden room. She installed security cameras throughout her apartment, 4 cameras covering every angle of the living space, bedroom and front door. The cameras recorded continuously to a cloud storage service, giving Rachel the ability to review footage from anywhere on her phone. What the cameras revealed over the following weeks turned Rachel's unease into overwhelming terror. The footage showed her apartment door opening each night at exactly 2 in the morning, the door swinging inward slowly despite being locked with both the knob lock and deadbolt engaged. The door would remain open for precisely 3 minutes, though nothing visible ever entered or exited. During those 3 minutes, objects throughout the apartment would move on their own. Keys sliding across the counter, cabinet doors opening silently, the coffee maker turning on and beginning to brew. Most disturbing, the camera aimed at her bedroom showed her closet door opening during those 3 minutes, though the bedroom door itself remained closed and locked from the inside where Rachel slept. Rachel reviewed hours of footage documenting every occurrence and noticed that items moved to specific locations that seemed deliberately chosen. Her keys always ended up on the hook that she never used, always the 3rd hook from the left on her key rack. Coffee always brewed at 6:15, the exact time visible on the camera timestamp. Clothing appearing in her hamper was always placed on top, folded neatly, always size small. Someone or something was maintaining patterns, following routines that Rachel had not established. After 2 weeks of documented phenomena, Rachel stopped sleeping in the apartment entirely. She spent nights in her car parked in the building lot, too frightened to remain inside but unable to afford breaking her lease and moving elsewhere. She continued going to work, maintaining appearances of normalcy, but exhaustion and fear wore her down visibly. Jesse noticed her deteriorating condition and tried to convince her to leave the apartment. But Rachel felt trapped by financial constraints and stubborn determination to understand what was happening. The climactic incident occurred on a Friday night during Rachel's 4th week in the apartment. She had fallen asleep in her car as usual, but woke at 2:30 in the morning with an inexplicable compulsion to check her apartment. Using her phone, she accessed the security camera feeds and watched in real time as her apartment door opened precisely at 2 a.m. But this night, something different happened. Instead of remaining empty, the doorway filled with a shadow, a dark silhouette that moved into her apartment with purposeful movements. Rachel watched frozen as the figure moved through her living room toward her bedroom. The camera showed the bedroom door opening, though it should have been locked. The figure entered her bedroom and moved directly to the closet. Rachel switched to the bedroom camera angle and saw the figure pull the closet door fully open and stand before the hidden room she had discovered. For several minutes, the figure remained motionless. Then it moved systematically through her apartment, touching objects, adjusting items, maintaining the routines Rachel had documented. Rachel called the police from her car, describing what she was witnessing on her security cameras. Officers arrived within 10 minutes and entered the building while Rachel waited outside, too terrified to accompany them. The police searched her apartment thoroughly but found no intruder. They reviewed her security footage and confirmed that it clearly showed someone entering and moving through her space, but inexplicably the figure cast no reflection in the mirror visible in multiple camera angles, and close examination of the footage revealed the figure's feet never quite touched the floor, hovering centimeters above the carpet. One officer, a veteran named Ramirez, took Rachel aside and asked her directly if she knew about Catherine Marsh. When Rachel confirmed she had researched the previous tenant, Ramirez revealed information not included in public reports. Catherine had called the police 4 times in the month before her disappearance, reporting that someone was entering her apartment at night. She claimed to have installed locks and security measures, but the intrusions continued. The night Catherine disappeared, she had called the police at 1:58 a.m., 2 minutes before Rachel's footage consistently showed her door opening. Catherine told the dispatcher that her door was opening on its own and someone was inside her apartment. Officers arrived at 2:25 a.m. and found the apartment empty. Catherine's phone on the kitchen counter still connected to the 911 call, but no sign of Catherine herself. Ramirez admitted that investigators had always suspected the landlord, Dennis, of involvement in Catherine's disappearance, but could never establish evidence. Dennis had keys to all units and opportunity to enter at will, but the security footage Rachel captured showed something that defied normal investigation. Whatever entered her apartment at 2 a.m. each night did not behave like a physical intruder. Ramirez suggested Rachel leave immediately and not return to the apartment under any circumstances. Rachel followed this advice, abandoning her apartment that very night without even collecting her belongings. She broke her lease and moved in with her sister 200 miles away, accepting financial loss over continued terror. 2 months after Rachel fled, police arrested Dennis after a new tenant in the building discovered hidden passages built between walls, narrow crawl spaces that connected multiple apartments. Dennis had constructed an elaborate network of hidden access points throughout the building, allowing him to move between units undetected. He had been entering tenant apartments for years, watching residents sleep, touching their belongings, maintaining disturbing routines. Further investigation revealed that Dennis had been institutionalized twice for severe mental illness before purchasing the apartment building in 2018. Search warrants executed on his personal residence uncovered thousands of photographs of female tenants taken without their knowledge, detailed journals documenting his observations of their daily patterns, and most damning personal items reported missing by former tenants stretching back 5 years. Catherine Marsh's driver license was found in a locked box in Dennis's bedroom, along with licenses and identification belonging to 3 other women. All former tenants, all reported missing over the past 7 years. Catherine's remains were eventually discovered sealed inside a wall cavity in the building's basement, along with the remains of 2 other missing women. Dennis was charged with multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, and stalking. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming he had no memory of killing anyone. His trial is still pending. Rachel lives under an assumed name now, having legally changed her identity to escape the trauma and media attention surrounding the case. She refuses to live in any apartment building, renting only detached houses where walls do not connect to neighboring units. She still experiences panic attacks when she hears coffee makers turning on, the sound instantly transporting her back to those mornings in Cranberry Lake when she woke to freshly brewed coffee she never programmed. The apartment building where she lived for only 4 weeks has been condemned and sits empty. Its hidden passages sealed, but its dark history permanently embedded in the community memory of a place where walls held terrible secrets. Cal and his wife Emma purchased their dream home in Riverton after years of saving. A beautiful craftsman-style house on a quiet residential street surrounded by established families and mature trees. The property had excellent curb appeal with its wide front porch, original stained glass windows, and meticulously maintained garden. Their realtor Eric had presented the house as an exceptional opportunity, explaining that the seller needed to relocate quickly for work and was highly motivated to close the sale rapidly. The price reflected this urgency, listed 15% below comparable homes in the neighborhood. Cal and Emma saw it as the perfect starter home for their growing family, with 3 bedrooms and a large backyard ideal for the children they hoped to have. The closing process went smoothly, completed in just 3 weeks from offer to keys in hand. Eric praised them for being decisive buyers and wished them well as he handed over the final paperwork. Cal and Emma spent their first week in the house painting rooms, hanging pictures, and settling into the rhythms of home ownership. Their neighbors were friendly, stopping by with welcome gifts and offering recommendations for local services. Everything about the house and neighborhood felt perfect, exactly what they had hoped to find. Their first night actually sleeping in the house came after a week of renovation work, both of them exhausted from painting and unpacking. Cal and Emma went to bed early, falling asleep quickly in their new master bedroom. Cal woke suddenly at 3:30 in the morning, his internal alarm triggered by a sound he could not immediately identify. He lay still in the darkness, listening intently. Then he heard it again, a soft creaking sound coming from their bedroom door. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, Cal saw the door slowly swinging inward despite being locked from the inside with the privacy lock engaged. Standing in the doorway was a tall silhouette, a figure of a man backlit by the dim nightlight in the hallway. The figure stood completely motionless, facing their bed, watching them in silence. Cal's heart hammered in his chest as he reached over to shake Emma awake, never taking his eyes off the intruder. When Cal shouted for the figure to get out, the man retreated backward into the hallway without turning around. His movements unnatural and gliding, feet appearing not to walk but to slide across the floor. Cal leaped from bed and rushed to the doorway, but the hallway was empty. He checked every room in the house, turning on lights and searching closets, but found no one. All doors and windows remained locked from the inside. Emma called the police while Cal continued searching. Officers arrived within 15 minutes and conducted their own thorough search of the property, finding no signs of forced entry and no evidence anyone had been inside. The officer suggested Cal had experienced a vivid dream or sleep paralysis, common occurrences when sleeping in new environments. Cal knew what he had seen was real, but without evidence, police could do little more than file a report. Neither Cal nor Emma slept the rest of that night. The following day, they installed security cameras throughout the house, 8 cameras covering all entry points and major rooms, recording continuously to cloud storage. Cal also changed every lock in the house, installing high-security deadbolts on all exterior doors. They went to bed that second night feeling more secure, protected by technology and new locks. But at 3:30 in the morning, the bedroom camera alert woke Cal. Checking his phone, he watched in real time as the front door opened slowly despite being locked, and the same tall figure from the previous night entered their home. Cal and Emma huddled in their locked bedroom, calling the police while watching on camera as the figure moved through their house methodically. The intruder walked from room to room, spending several minutes in each space, touching furniture and examining objects. His movements appeared purposeful, as though following a specific routine. Police arrived while the figure was still inside, and Cal directed them via phone to the living room where cameras showed the intruder standing motionless before the fireplace. But when officers entered, they found the room empty. Review of the footage confirmed the figure had been present seconds before police entry, yet somehow vanished. This pattern repeated nightly for the next week. At exactly 3:30 each morning, the front door would open regardless of locks or security measures, and the tall figure would enter, walking through the house for precisely 1 hour before leaving through the same door. Cal changed the locks twice more, installed additional security measures including door sensors and motion detectors, but nothing prevented the nightly intrusions. Police dusted for fingerprints but found nothing. The figure never triggered motion sensors, and attempts to capture him in person always failed. The intruder somehow aware of police presence and vanishing before confrontation. Desperate for answers, Cal began researching the house's previous owner. Eric, the realtor, had told them the seller relocated for work, but property records revealed a different story. The previous owner, a man named Richard Brennan, had not relocated at all. Richard had died 3 weeks before Cal and Emma's purchase, not from natural causes, but from an apparent suicide in the master bedroom of the house. The realtor had deliberately misrepresented this fact, likely knowing disclosure of a recent death would complicate the sale. Cal confronted Eric about the deception, but the realtor claimed he acted on instructions from Richard's estate executor and had no obligation to disclose deaths that occurred on the property under state law. Frustrated, Cal dug deeper into Richard's history. Richard had purchased the house in 1984 and lived there alone for 40 years, never married, no children. A reclusive man whom neighbors described as pleasant but distant. Longtime residents of the street remembered Richard as someone who kept to himself, maintaining his property immaculately, but rarely engaging socially with the community. One neighbor, an elderly woman named Phyllis who had lived on the street since the 1970s, shared information with Cal that cast the nightly intrusions in a more disturbing light. Phyllis revealed that for years, even before Richard's death, she had seen lights moving through the house late at night when Richard was known to be sleeping. She assumed Richard was a restless sleeper, or perhaps suffered from insomnia, but the patterns never quite made sense. The lights would move through rooms in a specific sequence, always the same route, always lasting about an hour, then disappearing. Phyllis also mentioned that Richard had a twin brother named Robert who had lived with him decades ago. Robert suffered from severe mental illness and had been institutionalized in the early 1990s after exhibiting increasingly erratic and dangerous behavior. She did not know details, but remembered Richard visiting his brother regularly at a psychiatric facility about 2 hours away. Robert had been released from institutional care sometime in the early 2000s, but Phyllis never saw him return to the neighborhood and assumed he lived elsewhere. This information sent Cal in a new investigative direction. He contacted the psychiatric facility Phyllis mentioned and eventually learned that Robert Brennan had indeed been released in 2003 after a court ruling that he was no longer a danger to himself or others. Records showed Robert had maintained regular contact with his brother Richard for several years following release, but the facility had no information about Robert's current whereabouts. Cal obtained photographs of Robert from old news articles about his commitment hearing and was struck by how identical the brothers looked, virtually indistinguishable from one another. Cal reviewed all his security footage with fresh perspective, studying the figure's behavior and movements. He noticed details he had missed during the initial terror of the intrusions. The figure knew the house intimately, never fumbling for light switches, never hesitating at doorways, moving with the confidence of someone who had lived there for years. The figure also paused at specific locations on the walls, standing before seemingly random spots for extended periods as though looking at something only he could see. Cal investigated these spots where the figure consistently paused. Using a stud finder and careful examination, he discovered small holes drilled through the exterior walls at those exact locations, holes barely visible from inside but perfectly positioned to observe the rooms from outside. Following the holes to their exterior termination points, Cal found weathered lawn chairs positioned in the bushes around the house, hidden from street view but offering direct sight lines through the drilled holes. Someone had been watching the house from outside for years, observing the interior through these carefully placed peepholes. The horrifying realization crystallized: Robert had never truly left his brother's house. After his release from the psychiatric facility, Robert had been secretly living on the property, likely in the crawlspace or attic, entering the house nightly while Richard slept to walk through rooms he still considered his home. Richard must have known, must have tolerated his brother's presence out of guilt or familial obligation. When Richard died, Robert continued the routine, treating the house as his own, unable or unwilling to accept that circumstances had changed. Cal contacted police with this theory, and a thorough search of the property finally revealed what previous searches had missed. The crawl space beneath the house, accessed through an exterior vent that had been modified to open from outside, contained evidence of long-term habitation. Blankets, food wrappers, personal items belonging to both Richard and Robert, and dozens of notebooks filled with observations about the house and its routines. Robert had been living beneath the house for years, possibly decades, entering nightly through a hidden access panel in the floor of the hall closet that Cal and Emma had never noticed. Police set up surveillance and apprehended Robert 2 nights later as he entered the house through his hidden access point. Robert, now 68 years old, appeared confused and disoriented during arrest, insisting he had every right to be in his own home and demanding to know who these strangers were living in his house. Psychiatric evaluation determined Robert suffered from severe delusional disorder and had become fixated on the house as his anchor to reality. He had lived parasitically in the crawl space even while his brother was alive, and Richard had apparently accepted this arrangement rather than have his brother reinstitutionalized. Robert was returned to psychiatric care, this time in a secured facility where he would receive proper treatment. Cal and Emma had the crawl space completely sealed and removed all evidence of Robert's habitation, but the damage to their sense of security was permanent. They sold the house 6 months later at a loss, unable to sleep peacefully knowing someone had lived beneath their feet. The home's dark secret was disclosed to new buyers, as required by law once Robert's presence became known to authorities. The property value dropped significantly, the beautiful craftsman house forever marked by the knowledge that its walls and floors had concealed a hidden resident who watched and waited in the darkness beneath. Greg and his partner Olivia moved into a newly renovated duplex in Fircrest during the spring, attracted by the modern finishes, updated appliances, and affordable rent that seemed almost too good for the quality of the property. The building had been completely gutted and renovated by a local developer who specialized in transforming older properties into contemporary rental units. Their side of the duplex featured an open floor plan, large windows providing excellent natural light, and high-end fixtures throughout. The landlord, a businessman named Vincent, explained that he priced the units competitively to attract quality long-term tenants who would care for the property. Their neighbors through the shared wall were described by Vincent as ideal tenants, quiet professionals who kept to themselves and always paid rent on time. Greg and Olivia never actually met these neighbors during the showing or the move-in process, though they noticed a silver sedan consistently parked in the neighboring driveway. Vincent assured them the neighbors were simply private people who worked demanding schedules and preferred minimal social interaction. This seemed perfectly reasonable to Greg and Olivia, who valued their own privacy and were not seeking close relationships with neighbors. The first 3 weeks in the duplex passed pleasantly, with Greg and Olivia settling into routines, organizing their space and appreciating the quiet nature of their new home. What struck them as remarkable during those initial weeks was the complete absence of any sound from the neighboring unit. They never heard footsteps, voices, television sounds, or any indication that someone lived on the other side of the wall. The silence was so profound that Olivia joked their neighbor must be a ghost, moving through rooms without making any human noise. Greg appreciated the quiet, a welcome change from their previous apartment where thin walls broadcast every sound from neighboring units. Everything changed abruptly on their 24th night in the duplex. Greg woke at 2 in the morning to an unsettling sound penetrating through the bedroom wall. The wall shared with the neighboring unit. It sounded like voices, dozens of overlapping whispers in different tones, pitches, and cadences. None of the individual voices were clear enough to distinguish words, but the collective sound was unmistakable. Many people speaking simultaneously in urgent, insistent whispers. Greg sat up in bed, pressing his ear against the wall, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. Olivia woke to find Greg listening at the wall and immediately heard the whispering herself. They both sat in the darkness, listening to the unsettling chorus coming from the neighboring unit. The volume increased gradually over the course of an hour, growing from barely audible to distinctly loud, as though the speakers were moving closer to the shared wall. At its peak, the whispering was loud enough to be clearly heard from anywhere in their bedroom. Then, precisely at sunrise, when the first light began filtering through their windows, the whispering stopped abruptly, cutting off mid-sound as though someone had flipped a switch. Greg knocked on the neighboring unit's door that morning, hoping to speak with the neighbor about the disturbance. No one answered despite the silver sedan being parked in the driveway. He knocked several more times throughout the day at different hours, but never received a response. That evening, Greg and Olivia went to bed with apprehension, wondering if the whispering would return. At exactly 2 in the morning, it began again, following the same pattern. Starting quietly, gradually increasing in volume, dozens of overlapping voices speaking in urgent whispers, continuing for hours until sunrise silenced them instantly. This pattern repeated nightly for 2 weeks straight. Greg and Olivia became increasingly sleep-deprived and desperate for resolution. Greg called Vincent multiple times, explaining the situation and demanding he contact the neighbor about the noise. Vincent expressed surprise, claiming he had never received noise complaints about that tenant in the 2 years since renovating the property. He promised to reach out to the neighbor, but reported back that his calls and messages went unanswered, which was unusual but not unprecedented for someone who traveled frequently for work. After 14 nights of the disturbing whispering, Greg called the police non-emergency line to request a wellness check on the neighboring unit, concerned that something might be wrong with the occupant. 2 officers arrived and knocked on the neighbor's door without response. With no immediate evidence of danger or emergency, they could not legally force entry without the landlord present. Vincent arrived within an hour, expressing concern and confusion about the situation. He used his key to open the neighboring unit, and officers entered to conduct a welfare check. What they found stunned everyone present. The unit was completely empty, not a single piece of furniture, no belongings, no evidence that anyone lived there or had lived there recently. The walls had been painted and the floors cleaned, leaving the space looking exactly as it might after renovation and before occupancy. Vincent stood speechless, unable to explain the empty unit. He insisted his records showed an active lease with a tenant who paid rent electronically each month, payments that cleared his bank account regularly. The silver sedan in the driveway belonged to no one present, and a registration check revealed it was reported stolen 3 months earlier from a town 200 miles away. But the most disturbing discovery came when officers examined the walls more closely. The shared wall between the 2 units, the wall through which Greg and Olivia heard the nightly whispering, was covered entirely in newspaper clippings. Hundreds of articles carefully cut from various newspapers and magazines, overlapping each other in layers, all adhered to the wall with clear tape. Every single article dealt with missing persons cases from the past 20 years. Articles about people who vanished without explanation from various locations across the country. Faces of the missing stared out from the wall, names and details of their disappearances preserved in yellowing newsprint. Officers documented the wall extensively, photographing every clipping and beginning an investigation into who created the disturbing collage and why. Vincent was questioned extensively, but financial records confirmed that rent payments came from a legitimate bank account belonging to someone named Michael Chen, and Vincent had never actually met this tenant in person. The lease had been signed electronically, rent paid automatically, and all communication conducted via email. Vincent had never physically inspected the unit during the tenancy because the tenant was described as extremely private, and Vincent respected that boundary as long as rent arrived on time. That night, despite the discovery of the empty unit, the whispering returned, but with a crucial difference. Instead of coming from the neighboring unit, the sound now emanated from inside Greg and Olivia's own walls, specifically from within the shared wall cavity itself. The sound was louder than ever, more insistent, and the overlapping voices seemed to be saying Greg's name repeatedly. Olivia heard her own name whispered among the chorus. They fled their bedroom and spent the night in their living room, but the whispering followed them, seeming to come from every wall in their duplex. Greg called Vincent in the middle of the night, demanding answers and threatening legal action. Vincent arrived at the duplex personally and heard the whispering himself, his face draining of color as the reality of the situation became undeniable. Vincent made a decision that night to open the walls themselves, calling an emergency contractor who arrived with tools before dawn. The contractor cut into the shared wall from the empty neighboring unit, revealing the wall cavity between the 2 living spaces. Inside the cavity, they found a small cassette player wired to a timer mechanism set to activate at 2 a.m. each night. The cassette player contained a 90-minute tape of recorded voices, dozens of different people speaking in whispers, their words indistinct but their tones urgent and disturbing. The device had been running nightly for an unknown length of time, playing the same 90-minute loop until the timer shut it off at sunrise. But behind the cassette player, deeper within the wall cavity, they discovered something far more sinister. Polaroid photographs, dozens of them scattered throughout the wall insulation. Every photograph showed Greg and Olivia in their duplex, captured through their windows and through small holes drilled in their walls. The photographs documented their daily activities from the moment they moved in. Candid shots of them cooking, watching television, sleeping, changing clothes, every private moment recorded by someone with access to hidden vantage points throughout their unit. The photographs were dated on the back, organized chronologically, documenting 3 full weeks of comprehensive surveillance. Further investigation revealed additional holes drilled through walls at strategic locations, tiny openings invisible unless someone knew where to look, positioned to provide sight lines into every room of Greg and Olivia's duplex. Vincent's renovation had been specifically designed with surveillance in mind. The shared wall constructed with hidden access panels and observation points allowing someone to watch tenants without detection. Police discovered that the neighboring unit was never actually rented. The lease and automatic payments, elaborate fiction created by Vincent himself to explain why the space remained empty while he used it to spy on tenants in the other half of the duplex. Financial investigation revealed Vincent owned 4 other renovated duplexes in surrounding towns, all with similar construction features. Search warrants executed on those properties uncovered identical surveillance setups, with thousands of photographs of previous tenants stored in Vincent's personal residence. He had been systematically spying on renters for years, constructing properties specifically designed for covert observation, using the adjacent empty units as observation posts while collecting rent from unsuspecting victims in the occupied units. Police arrested Vincent on multiple charges, including stalking, voyeurism, illegal surveillance, and fraud. Investigators identified 7 previous tenants who had lived in Vincent's properties, all of whom reported similar experiences with unexplained sounds and feelings of being watched. Most disturbingly, 4 people who had rented Vincent's properties over the past decade were listed among missing persons cases, their disappearances never solved. Police found personal items belonging to these missing individuals hidden in Vincent's home, suggesting his obsession with surveillance had escalated into something far darker. 3 of the 4 missing persons were eventually located alive, living under assumed names in different states, having fled after becoming convinced someone was watching them but unable to prove it to authorities. The 4th missing person, a young woman named Jennifer, has never been found. Evidence suggests Vincent's surveillance of Jennifer became an obsession, with over 5,000 photographs of her recovered from his possession, far more than any other victim. Jennifer's family believes she confronted Vincent about the surveillance and disappeared as a result. Though without remains, no murder charges could be filed. Greg and Olivia moved out of the duplex immediately and broke their lease, which Vincent obviously could not contest given the circumstances. They both underwent therapy for trauma and violation of privacy, struggling with the knowledge that their most intimate moments had been observed and photographed. The duplex and all of Vincent's properties were seized and sold to compensate victims, though no amount of money could restore the sense of safety and privacy that was stolen from them. Vincent awaits trial on multiple felony charges, facing decades in prison if convicted on all counts. Investigators continue searching for evidence related to Jennifer's disappearance, hoping to bring closure to her family. Greg and Olivia now live in a detached single-family home with no shared walls, and they have every room professionally swept for surveillance devices regularly. The whispering still haunts their nightmares, dozens of overlapping voices calling their names in the darkness, a reminder that walls meant to provide shelter and privacy can also conceal the worst violations of trust imaginable. Nathan and his wife Claire purchased a historic home in Flathead County for renovation, planning to document the entire transformation process for their growing social media following. The house, built in 1904, represented everything they loved about historic architecture: ornate woodwork, original hardwood floors, high ceilings with decorative plaster medallions, and a grand staircase that anchored the center hall. The property had been neglected for years and needed extensive work, but Nathan and Claire saw tremendous potential beneath the accumulated damage of time and neglect. They envisioned transforming the deteriorating structure into a showcase of period-appropriate restoration techniques, sharing their journey with thousands of online followers interested in historic preservation. Their contractor, an experienced builder named Tom who specialized in historic renovations, walked through the property during their initial planning session and provided a sobering assessment of the work required. Beyond the obvious cosmetic issues, the house needed substantial structural repairs, updated electrical and plumbing systems, and remediation of water damage in several areas. Tom mentioned almost casually that previous workers he had sent to assess the property reported strange occurrences, unexplained sounds, and feelings of unease that made them uncomfortable working alone in certain rooms. Nathan dismissed this as superstition designed to inflate labor costs, or as workers being spooked by the house's aged and deteriorating condition. Old houses made strange sounds as they settled and adjusted to temperature changes. Nothing supernatural about creaking floors and groaning timbers. Demolition work began on a Monday morning in early autumn. Nathan and Claire were present as Tom's crew started removing damaged plaster and opening walls to assess the underlying structure. The second-floor bedrooms required the most extensive work, with water damage from roof leaks having compromised walls and ceilings in multiple rooms. Workers were systematically removing damaged sections when one crew member made an unexpected discovery in what had been designated as Bedroom 3. Behind layers of wallpaper and plaster, he found a door that had been sealed and concealed, plastered over so thoroughly that no evidence of its existence remained visible from the room side. Tom carefully removed the plaster and wallpaper covering the door, revealing a solid wood door with original hardware still intact. The door was locked, but the key remained in the lock on the bedroom side, suggesting whoever sealed the room did so from outside, locking the door and then concealing it completely. Nathan experienced a moment of genuine excitement, imagining what historical treasures might lie behind a sealed door in a house over a century old. Tom turned the key and pushed the door open, revealing a perfectly preserved child's bedroom frozen in time. The room measured approximately 10 by 12 feet, with a single window that had been boarded over from the inside, blocking all natural light. Furniture remained arranged as though someone might return at any moment. A small bed with faded quilted coverlet, a wooden dresser with carved pulls, a rocking chair positioned near the window, and shelves lined with toys and books. Everything was covered in thick dust accumulated over decades except for one item. The rocking chair showed no dust accumulation whatsoever, its wooden surface clean and polished as though regularly maintained. Nathan photographed the room extensively, documenting every detail for their social media audience. A calendar hung on the wall showed October 1952, the last month displayed before time stopped in this sealed space. Children's drawings were tacked to one wall, simple crayon pictures of houses and families. A music box sat on the dresser, and when Nathan opened it, the mechanism still worked, playing a tinny melody that echoed eerily in the silent, sealed room. Claire felt deeply unsettled by the preserved bedroom and suggested they research the house's history before proceeding with renovation of this particular space. That night, after workers had left and Nathan and Claire returned to their temporary rental, strange things began happening in the house. Tom called Nathan at 8 in the evening, his voice tense and confused. He had returned to the property to retrieve tools he had forgotten and found the rocking chair from the sealed room now sitting in the center of the main floor hallway. Tom insisted no one had moved it. All workers had left hours earlier and he had locked the house securely. Nathan drove back to the property and confirmed Tom's account. The rocking chair sat in the downstairs hallway, positioned precisely in the center, facing the front door. They moved it back to the sealed bedroom and locked the house again, though both men felt unnerved by the inexplicable relocation. The rocking chair appeared in different locations each morning after that initial incident. Workers would arrive to find it in the kitchen, the living room, the front porch, always carefully positioned as though deliberately placed. Tools began disappearing from the worksite, expensive items that workers were certain they had left in specific locations, only to find them missing when needed. The missing tools would reappear days later in impossible locations, sealed inside walls that had been closed up, or placed in locked rooms to which no one had keys. Nathan researched the house's history at the County Historical Society and local library. He discovered records indicating a family named Morrison had owned the house from 1910 to 1955. Census records showed the family included a daughter named Emma Morrison, born in 1942. Local newspaper archives from October 1952 contained a tragic article describing Emma's death at age 10. She had fallen down the grand staircase, breaking her neck in the fall, dying instantly according to the coroner's report. The article mentioned that Emma's parents, grief-stricken beyond consolation, could not bear to see their daughter's room and had it sealed shortly after her death. The Morrisons sold the house in 1955 and moved away, their remaining years marked by the tragedy that destroyed their family. Armed with this information, Nathan felt he understood the sealed room, but understanding did not prepare him for what followed. The house itself seemed to change after Emma's room was opened. Doors would be found standing open each morning despite being locked the night before. The rocking chair continued its nightly migrations, moving between rooms with apparent purpose. Construction work began experiencing inexplicable setbacks. Freshly installed drywall would be found damaged overnight, as though something had been sealed inside walls and fought to escape. Paint applied to walls would drip and run during the night, creating patterns that looked disturbingly like small handprints. Nathan documented everything with the motion-activated cameras he had installed throughout the property to capture time-lapse footage of the renovation. Review of the footage revealed phenomena that defied rational explanation. The rocking chair moved on its own, rocking slowly in empty rooms when no one was present. Small footprints appeared in sawdust spread across floors, child-sized prints that materialized during the night. Most disturbing were the shadows captured by cameras positioned in the upstairs hallway. A child-sized shadow appeared regularly on the walls, cast by no visible source, moving along the hallway and pausing at Emma's sealed bedroom door before fading away. Nathan became obsessed with reviewing the camera footage, spending hours each night watching and re-watching recordings, trying to find rational explanations for what he was documenting. His sleep suffered, his relationship with Claire grew strained, and his work on the renovation slowed dramatically. Claire begged him to abandon the project, to sell the house and walk away, but Nathan refused. He convinced himself that understanding what was happening would provide closure, that there had to be a logical explanation for the phenomena they were experiencing. The climactic encounter occurred during what should have been the final week of major renovation work. Nathan was conducting a final inspection of the basement, checking electrical work that had been completed the previous day. He descended the narrow stairs alone, carrying a clipboard and flashlight, methodically verifying that all work met code requirements. As he examined the electrical panel in the far corner of the basement, he noticed a section of the stone foundation wall that looked different from surrounding areas. Newer mortar filling gaps between stones in a roughly rectangular pattern. Using a hammer and chisel from his tool bag, Nathan began chipping away at the newer mortar, curious about what might lie behind it. The mortar came away easily, too easily, revealing that someone had created a hidden crawl space behind a loose section of the foundation wall. Nathan removed several stones and shone his flashlight into the dark space beyond. The beam illuminated a small cavity, perhaps 4 feet deep, containing dozens of items, toys from different eras spanning 7 decades, children's books with publication dates ranging from the 1950s through the 2010s, and a journal bound in leather. Nathan pulled the journal from the crawl space and opened it to the first page. The handwriting was childish, large uneven letters spelling out Emma's book at the top. The entries began normally, typical diary entries from a young girl describing daily life, school activities, and family events. But the entries continued beyond October 1952, beyond the date of Emma's death. The writing deteriorated over subsequent entries, becoming more erratic and disturbing. Later entries described Emma's loneliness after her death, her sadness at being forgotten, her desperate need for companionship. The final entry, dated just 2 weeks before Nathan and Claire purchased the house, was written in the same childish hand but with a coherent message that chilled Nathan to his core. The entry read, "The new family is almost ready. They have opened my room and remembered me. I have collected toys for decades from children who visited, preparing for when I would no longer be alone. Soon there will be a baby in the house, and I will finally have a little brother or sister to play with forever." Nathan dropped the journal and ran from the basement, his heart pounding with primal fear. Claire was 3 months pregnant, a fact they had shared with no one yet, planning to announce after completing the renovation. The implication of the journal entry was unmistakable. Emma knew about the baby, and she intended to ensure the child became her eternal companion. Nathan and Claire left the property that day and never returned, abandoning the renovation project despite the enormous financial investment they had made. They sold the house within a month at a devastating loss to a family with 3 young children. Nathan felt guilty about not warning the new owners, but knew any disclosure about Emma would sound like delusion or make the house unsellable. The new family reported no unusual activity for the first 6 weeks. Then their youngest daughter, age 4, began talking about her new friend Emma, describing her in detail, though she had never seen photographs of the girl who died in 1952. The daughter told her parents that Emma showed her secret places in the house and taught her games. The child began spending hours alone in Emma's sealed bedroom, which the new owners had left mostly untouched, finding it charming and historic. Nathan and Claire's daughter was born healthy in spring, and they moved across the country to distance themselves from the house and its influence. Nathan destroyed all footage and documentation from the renovation, wanting no reminders of what they experienced. But occasionally he still dreams of the rocking chair, moving through dark rooms, always searching, always waiting for the child that got away. Jesse returned to his childhood home in Island Lake after inheriting the property following his father's death, a homecoming he had never anticipated making. He had not visited the house in 15 years, not since leaving for college at age 18 and deliberately severing contact with his father due to their volatile and painful relationship. The years of distance had been necessary for Jesse's mental health, allowing him to build a life free from the toxic dynamics that defined his childhood. But death has a way of pulling people back to places they thought they had escaped forever. The house stood exactly as Jesse remembered it, a modest 2-story colonial on a quiet street lined with mature oak trees. Walking through the front door felt like stepping backward through time into a museum of his past. Nothing had changed in 15 years, not the furniture arrangement, not the artwork on walls, not even the outdated magazines still fanned across the coffee table. The air smelled stale and slightly sour, the scent of a space inhabited by someone who had stopped caring about maintenance or cleanliness years earlier. Jesse spent the first day sorting through his father's belongings with clinical detachment, separating items of value from trash, making piles for donation and disposal. The task felt surreal, handling objects he remembered from childhood while emotionally disconnected from the man who owned them. His father had lived alone for decades after Jesse's mother left when Jesse was 12, and the house reflected that solitary existence. Dust coated every surface. Dishes sat unwashed in the kitchen sink, and mail lay unopened in stacks throughout the living room. As Jesse worked through the second floor, he approached his childhood bedroom with genuine apprehension. The door was closed, and Jesse noticed immediately what had been added since he left: padlocks. 3 heavy-duty padlocks secured the door from the outside, professional-grade locks that seemed absurdly excessive for a simple bedroom door. Jesse felt a chill of unease as he searched through his father's belongings for keys, eventually finding them in a small box in the master bedroom alongside other personal effects. Unlocking the padlocks one by one, Jesse's hands trembled slightly with emotions he could not quite identify. He pushed the door open and found his bedroom preserved exactly as he had left it at age 18, down to the posters still taped to walls and textbooks still arranged on shelves. But cameras mounted in all 4 corners of the ceiling were definitely not original to the room. Professional surveillance cameras, the kind used for security systems, positioned to provide complete coverage of every angle of the small bedroom. Jesse stood frozen in the doorway, trying to comprehend why his father would install surveillance equipment in an empty bedroom. Jesse discovered the answer in his father's office, a converted dining room on the first floor filled with computer equipment and filing cabinets. Dozens of external hard drives were stacked on shelves, each one meticulously labeled with date ranges spanning the 15 years since Jesse left home. The labels indicated continuous recording, thousands of hours of footage archived systematically. Jesse connected one of the drives to his father's computer and began reviewing the files. The footage showed Jesse's empty bedroom, recorded from multiple camera angles 24 hours a day. Jesse fast-forwarded through hours of static footage showing nothing but an unoccupied room, dust accumulating on furniture, light changing as days passed. The recordings were mind-numbingly boring, yet his father had maintained them obsessively for 15 years, archiving every moment of emptiness. Jesse opened drives from different years and found the same thing: endless footage of his empty childhood bedroom, recorded faithfully, preserved permanently. But the hard drives were not the most disturbing discovery in the office. Jesse found psychiatric records documenting his father's mental health treatment beginning shortly after Jesse left for college. The records detailed a severe psychotic break triggered by Jesse's departure, resulting in hospitalization and diagnosis of delusional disorder. The psychiatrist's notes described his father's fixed false belief that Jesse had never actually left home, but was hiding somewhere in the house, playing an elaborate game or testing his father's patience. The medical records painted a devastating picture of mental deterioration. His father spent years searching the house nightly, convinced Jesse was concealed somewhere waiting to be found. He left food in Jesse's bedroom, cooking meals for 2 and setting a place at the table for his absent son. The cameras were installed as part of his father's delusional strategy to catch Jesse on film, to prove that his son was still there, just hiding from view. Therapy and medication provided minimal improvement, with his father maintaining his core delusion until his death despite medical intervention. Jesse read through years of psychiatric notes describing his father's conversations with doctors, his insistence that Jesse left clothing in the hamper, that dishes appeared in the sink that his father had not used, that he heard footsteps in the night that could only be Jesse moving through the house. The psychiatrist consistently noted that these were hallucinations and delusions, symptoms of his father's deteriorating mental condition, but his father rejected all attempts to convince him otherwise. Reading about his father's decline filled Jesse with complicated emotions: grief for the parent who had been lost to mental illness, guilt for leaving and never looking back, and profound sadness for the lonely years his father spent trapped in delusion. But Jesse also felt something else beginning to manifest as he spent time alone in the house. A creeping sense of unease that defied rational explanation. He began experiencing sensations similar to what his father had described in psychiatric records. Jesse heard footsteps in empty rooms, the distinctive creaking of specific floorboards that occurred when someone walked across them. Doors he left open would be found closed, and doors he closed would stand open. He caught movement in his peripheral vision, shadows shifting in ways that suggested presence rather than tricks of light. Most unsettling, Jesse found himself drawn to behaviors that mirrored his father's delusions, like pausing at the bottom of the stairs and listening for sounds from the second floor, or checking his childhood bedroom as though expecting to find someone there. On his fifth night in the house, Jesse woke at 3 in the morning to the sound of his father's voice calling his name from downstairs. The voice was unmistakable, the same tone and inflection his father had used throughout Jesse's childhood when calling him to dinner or summoning him from his room. Jesse sat up in bed, heart racing, telling himself he was dreaming or experiencing an auditory hallucination brought on by stress and grief. But the voice called again, clear and distinct, coming from the direction of the kitchen. Jesse descended the stairs slowly, following the sound of his father's voice. He found the kitchen lights on, though he had turned them off before bed. A place was set at the table with fresh food, steam rising from a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. The food was hot, recently prepared, impossible in a house where Jesse was the only living occupant. His father's voice called his name again, but this time it came from upstairs, from the direction of Jesse's childhood bedroom. Then the voice called from the basement, then from directly behind Jesse. Multiple instances of his father's voice overlapping impossibly, calling to him from every direction simultaneously. Jesse fled the house in his car, driving to a hotel 20 miles away where he spent the remainder of the night. In the morning, he contacted an estate sales service and hired them to handle the complete liquidation of his father's property. He refused to return to the house personally, authorizing the service to dispose of everything and prepare the property for sale. The service workers reported unusual difficulties during their work, including equipment malfunctions, unexplained temperature fluctuations, and the persistent feeling of being watched. When workers reviewed the surveillance footage from Jesse's bedroom cameras, which had continued recording throughout Jesse's stay in the house, they discovered something that the estate service supervisor felt obligated to report to Jesse. The footage from Jesse's final night showed Jesse himself setting the table in the kitchen, preparing food and moving through the house, though Jesse had no memory of these actions. The footage showed Jesse sleepwalking, performing activities while unconscious, acting out the very behaviors his father had attributed to delusion. This revelation forced Jesse to confront the possibility that his father's mental illness might have genetic components, that Jesse himself might be susceptible to the same delusional patterns that destroyed his father's final years. He sought psychiatric evaluation and was diagnosed with sleep disorder and acute stress response, but not with the psychotic disorder his father suffered. The psychiatrist explained that Jesse's sleepwalking and hallucinations were trauma responses, his mind processing grief and guilt through nocturnal behaviors, not evidence of permanent mental illness. The house sold eventually to a developer who demolished it and built townhomes on the lot. Jesse attended intensive therapy for 2 years, working through the complex trauma of his childhood and the disturbing experiences in his father's house. He learned that his father's delusion, while pathological and tragic, stemmed from profound grief and inability to accept abandonment. His father had loved him in a deeply damaged way, and that love had curdled into obsession when Jesse left. Jesse now lives on the opposite coast, as far from Island Lake as geography permits. He maintains no photographs of his childhood home and avoids returning to his hometown for any reason. But sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, Jesse hears his father's voice calling his name, a sound that exists somewhere between memory and present reality, a reminder that some houses leave marks that distance and time cannot fully erase. Bill and his family moved into a suburban community in Bonneville Basin during the summer, thrilled to find a neighborhood that seemed almost too perfect. The tree-lined streets featured well-maintained homes with manicured lawns, children playing safely on sidewalks, and an overall atmosphere of prosperity and community pride. After years of apartment living in the city, Bill and his wife Monica were excited to provide their 2 children with the quintessential suburban childhood experience. The house they purchased was a 4-bedroom colonial at the end of a cul-de-sac, surrounded by similar homes occupied by families who had lived in the neighborhood for years. Their neighbors welcomed them warmly from the moment the moving truck arrived. The Campbells from the house on their left brought homemade cookies and offered to help unpack. The Walkers from the house on their right arrived with a casserole and detailed recommendations for local services. Other neighbors stopped by throughout the day, introducing themselves, sharing stories about the neighborhood, and expressing genuine enthusiasm about the new family joining their community. Bill and Monica felt overwhelmed by the friendliness, remarking to each other that they had found exactly the kind of neighborhood they had always dreamed about. The first indication that something was not quite right came during their 3rd night in the house. Bill woke early around 5 in the morning and walked to the bathroom. Glancing out the window, he noticed Mrs. Campbell standing in her yard, facing Bill's house, completely motionless. The early morning light cast long shadows, and Mrs. Campbell stood perfectly still in her nightgown, staring directly at Bill's bedroom window. Bill watched for several minutes, waiting for her to move or acknowledge his presence, but she remained frozen in place like a statue. Eventually, Bill returned to bed, unsettled but telling himself she was probably sleepwalking or experiencing some kind of medical episode. That morning at breakfast, Bill mentioned the incident to Monica, who had her own strange observation to share. She had been unpacking kitchen boxes late the previous evening when she noticed Mr. Walker standing at his window watching their house. When Monica waved, Mr. Walker did not respond or move, just continued staring with an intensity that made Monica uncomfortable. Both of them agreed the incidents were odd but probably had innocent explanations, neighbors perhaps curious about the new family or coincidentally looking in their direction. The watching escalated rapidly over the following week. Anytime Bill looked out a window, day or night, someone from a neighboring house was visible, standing in their yard or at their window, facing Bill's house. The observers never acknowledged being seen, never waved or showed any sign of awareness that their behavior was unusual. They simply stood and watched, sometimes for hours, rotating shifts among the various neighbors so that Bill's house was under constant surveillance from multiple vantage points. Bill attempted to address the situation diplomatically. He approached Mr. Campbell while both men were checking their mailboxes, casually mentioning that he had noticed the neighbors seemed very interested in his family. Mr. Campbell looked confused and slightly hurt, insisting Bill must be mistaken, that everyone in the neighborhood respected privacy and would never intrude by watching. The conversation left Bill feeling dismissed and uncertain whether he was overreacting or identifying a genuine problem. Monica experienced the same dismissive response when she mentioned the watching to Mrs. Walker during a chance encounter at the grocery store. Mrs. Walker acted bewildered and concerned, suggesting that stress from moving might be causing Monica to misinterpret innocent activities. But that night, the watching was more obvious than ever, with multiple neighbors standing in their yards after dark, positioned in a loose circle around Bill's property, all facing inward toward his house. Bill's teenage daughter found a notebook in their mailbox 2 weeks after they moved in, a discovery that transformed vague unease into concrete fear. The notebook contained detailed logs of the family's routines, meticulously documented with dates and times. The logs recorded when each family member woke up, when they left the house, where they went, when they returned, what they wore, what they ate for meals, and even snippets of conversations overheard through windows. The observations spanned the entire 2 weeks since their arrival, multiple entries each day, clearly the product of systematic surveillance by someone with constant visual access to their home. The handwriting changed throughout the notebook, sometimes neat and feminine, other times blocky and masculine, occasionally deteriorating into barely legible scrawl. Multiple people were contributing to the surveillance log, coordinating their observations to create a comprehensive record of the family's every activity. Bill called the police immediately, showing them the notebook and explaining the constant watching they had experienced. 2 officers took a report and agreed the situation warranted investigation, though they noted the notebook alone did not constitute an actual crime since it contained only observations of activities visible from public spaces. Police interviewed several neighbors who all expressed shock and confusion about the allegations. Each neighbor denied watching Bill's family, denied any knowledge of the surveillance log, and suggested Bill might be experiencing paranoid delusions or stress-related anxiety. The officers found themselves unable to substantiate Bill's claims despite the physical evidence of the notebook, since none of the neighbors admitted involvement and no laws had been technically violated by watching from their own properties. Frustrated by the lack of official help, Bill installed security cameras covering all angles of his property. The footage captured over the following week revealed behavior so disturbing that Bill questioned his own sanity when reviewing it. Every night at precisely 3 in the morning, all 6 families from the surrounding houses emerged from their homes and gathered in Bill's yard. The neighbors arranged themselves in a perfect circle around Bill's house, equidistant from each other, standing completely motionless for exactly 1 hour. They wore regular clothing, not robes or uniforms, and carried nothing in their hands. They simply stood in formation, silent and still, until exactly 4 in the morning when they dispersed simultaneously, returning to their homes without speaking or acknowledging each other. Bill showed the footage to Monica and they watched together in horrified disbelief. The behavior was so bizarre and coordinated that it suggested either elaborate conspiracy or shared mental illness among all their neighbors. Bill attempted to confront the neighbors the following day, showing them printouts from the security footage, but each neighbor smiled pleasantly and claimed Bill must have fabricated or doctored the images. They suggested he seek mental health evaluation, expressing concern that he seemed to be experiencing paranoid episodes. That night, Bill decided to stay awake and confront the neighbors directly during their nightly gathering. He positioned himself by the front window with his phone ready to record, waiting for 3 in the morning. At the appointed time, his neighbors emerged from their houses as usual, moving with synchronized precision to take their positions in the circle around his house. Bill walked outside immediately, standing on his porch and demanding answers about their behavior. The neighbors stood motionless in their circle, giving no indication they heard him speak. Bill walked directly to Mrs. Campbell, standing inches from her face, speaking loudly and insistently, asking what they were doing and why they were tormenting his family. Mrs. Campbell's eyes remained fixed on Bill's house, looking through him as though he did not exist. Bill moved to Mr. Walker with the same result, then to the others, receiving no acknowledgement from any of them. Then, simultaneously, all 6 neighbors turned their heads to look directly at Bill. The movement was perfectly synchronized, occurring in the same instant as though controlled by a single consciousness. When they spoke, their voices merged into perfect unison, 12 people speaking identical words at identical pitch and rhythm. The neighborhood welcomes you. The neighborhood keeps you. The neighborhood never lets go. Bill ran back inside his house and locked every door, his hands shaking as he secured windows and closed blinds. Monica and the children huddled together in the master bedroom while Bill watched through a gap in the curtains. The neighbors remained in their circle until exactly 4 in the morning, then dispersed silently to their homes just as they had every previous night. Bill sat awake until dawn, considering what action to take, whether to flee immediately or try to find some explanation for the nightmare his dream neighborhood had become. The next morning, Bill contacted a real estate attorney to discuss breaking their mortgage and selling the house immediately. What the attorney discovered made escape impossible. The property deed had been altered, showing a clause Bill never saw during closing. A binding 99-year covenant with the Bonneville Basin Neighborhood Association requiring owners to maintain residency and participate in community standards. The clause included substantial financial penalties for breach of contract, penalties that would bankrupt Bill's family and still not free them from the property obligation. Bill insisted he never signed any such agreement and that the clause must have been added fraudulently after closing. The attorney investigated and found that the title company, the mortgage lender, and even the judge who could potentially void the contract were all residents of Bonneville Basin, all members of the same neighborhood association. Every official channel Bill might use to contest the deed led back to people who lived in the neighborhood and participated in the nightly gatherings. 3 months after moving to Bonneville Basin, Bill and his family were seen by a delivery driver participating in the nightly circle, standing motionless among their neighbors at 3 in the morning. The driver reported what he witnessed to local police, but when officers investigated, all residents of the neighborhood, including Bill and his family, denied any unusual behavior. Bill's daughter smiled pleasantly at the officers and explained that her father had been under significant stress lately and sometimes imagined things that were not happening. The police filed a report noting no evidence of criminal activity or residents in need of assistance. Bill's family still lives in Bonneville Basin. They maintain their yard to neighborhood standards, participate in community events, and welcome new families warmly when houses occasionally become available. Observers might notice something slightly off about the residents, a synchronization to their movements, a uniformity to their smiles, but nothing concrete enough to investigate. The neighborhood remains highly desirable, with houses selling quickly despite some prospective buyers reporting feelings of unease during showings. New families continue moving to Bonneville Basin, attracted by the beautiful homes, excellent schools, and tight-knit community atmosphere. They are always welcomed warmly with homemade cookies and casseroles, with genuine enthusiasm and helpful advice. And within a few weeks, they too begin appearing in the nightly circles, standing motionless in the darkness, their individuality slowly absorbed into something larger, something ancient, something that ensures the neighborhood keeps its residents forever. The neighborhood welcomes you. The neighborhood keeps you. The neighborhood never lets go.